All right, a quick disclaimer. This collection of Google Ads guides is content that I produced from 2018 to 2021. Some of it you can still apply. Some of it is slightly outdated due to interface changes in Google Ads and Google Analytics, and some of it is an archive of how Google Ads worked previously. The first several dozen videos will be released for free on YouTube. The rest you can get instant access to, including the scripts, keyword lists, and files using the link in the description. I'm working on sharing all of my knowledge with you on advanced Google Ads marketing after being in this game for over 12 years. So if you like this content, make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Leonidas here, and let's begin. All right, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to cover blocking spying on our site and preventing bad bot traffic. So in this tutorial, I'm going to cover the purpose of setting up the firewall as well as warnings when you are setting up the firewall. Then we're going to set up our firewall on Cloudflare. Then we're going to create a quick IP list for our Cloudflare. And then we're going to go into our website that is set up on the Cloudflare system. And we're going to go ahead and allow certain traffic while at the same time block and challenge other traffic. And then we're going to go ahead and install a particular plugin onto our WordPress site, which is going to focus on blocking proxy as well as VPN traffic from entering our website. And then finally, I'll cover two additional plugins that you may want to use if you do decide to run landing pages to your site. And then finally, a review. So what is the purpose of filtering the traffic? This allows us to prevent spying on our landing page. So this will only allow server traffic to enter our site or only ourselves to enter our site, but everyone else we can completely block. As well, we can set up filters to allow good traffic or filtered traffic based on our criteria that we want to enter our site. And then we can also prevent bot traffic from entering our site, which ultimately ends up messing with our data as well as creating fraudulent transactions or fraudulent traffic or fraudulent clicks on our site. So some of the warnings in regards to setting up our firewall, you may end up blocking backend server traffic. So that is the reason why we want to create our IP list so that this does not happen. We don't end up blocking any of our own traffic that we need to access the site, such as server checks or updates, as well as payment for providers such as Stripe, PayPal, etc. if you do decide to run transactions on your site. So these are just some additional warnings when you do set up the firewall. So let's go ahead and begin. So this tutorial assumes that you're using Cloudflare as your DNS provider, your domain name server provider, and that you've already connected your site to Cloudflare. If you haven't done that already, then go ahead and check out the other tutorial that I'll make sure to provide in this particular post. And then we'll go ahead and access our site. So in this case, I'm going to use ppcbasicsite.com. It's simply a demo site that I set up for a previous tutorial. And then once we access that, here's going to be our interface. Remember that your DNS should be set up correctly. So here we have my IP address and then the address for the website itself, and then any other records that you might have for the domain itself. But for the most part, all we need to do is we'll need to go into Firewall. And previously I set up the firewall on this site to block particular traffic, but just to give you a breakdown of the overview, here we have the actions that are taken for the particular IP addresses that are going to our site. So in this case, 192, which is typically a local domain, which typically means that the server itself is trying to access itself. The action is allowed, so the traffic is being able to go to our site. But these other IP addresses that we see along the way, such as anything from United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and China, which is typically bot traffic, so robot traffic, then there is a JavaScript challenge that goes into place, and it tests the browser and the user for about 5 seconds to see if that they are a legit user, and then it allows them, or it might end up blocking them as well. So that's the breakdown there. You can also access your results from a custom range, and if you have a premium version of this Cloudflare system, they can actually end up seeing more results and more data. But for the most part, you can see that here
all of this traffic is being allowed because I set it up within the rules. And here we can see that this is my server IP. So this is also being allowed, but it doesn't look like there's anything else being blocked. All right, so here we go. So this particular IP address, whatever it is, we can actually go ahead and click on it. And it looks like it's trying to access a particular URL on my site, whatever that is, wlwmanifest.xml. So I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a fake URL. Maybe this particular bot thinks that I have this particular file. So this bot is being challenged. And fortunately, this bot is not passing the challenge, so it ultimately ends up getting blocked. But all the good bots end up simply bypassing the filter and going straight away to the site. So in this case, we have Jetpack, which is a plugin that is available on my site, and it is being permitted to access the site. So let's go ahead and set up our firewall rules. And here we're going to set up the rules to start challenging the traffic that ends up coming to our site. But before we do that, one thing I like to do is I like to configure IP addresses that I want to permit to access my site. So to do that, we'll go back to our account level, and then here where it would typically show all of your sites that you've connected to Cloudflare, we'll go into configurations, and then we'll go into lists, and then here we can start creating IP lists that we want accessing our site. So to give you an example, here's a list of IP addresses I permit accessing my site, and I'll go ahead and click edit. And you can see that there's two IP addresses here. The first one is the IP address of my server. So obviously I want my server being able to access itself, and this I created back in November. And then the second IP address is actually the IP address of my computer. So this is an IPv6 address. Now typically you can put here a short IPv4 address, but in this case, my IP address is actually IPv6. It's the new format, which is like extra long. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So to get this particular IP address, we're going to go back. So we're going to go ahead and create a new list. And in this case, because I'm using the free version of Cloudflare, it only permits me one list, but technically you would just create the list name here. And there are certain rules. So you can only do lowercase and no spaces. So it has to be something like this, allowed IPs. Right, but we'll go back to the list and we're going to go ahead and edit this right here. And then you simply select add items and then whatever the IP address that you want. So the IP address of my server, I'll go back to the domain itself. So within the site itself, we'll go into DNS and here's the IP address of my server and we'll plug that in, my server IP. And then we'll select add to list. Okay, so it's already in the list itself. Now we're going to go ahead and add an IPv6. So to do this, we'll do remove and go ahead and add items. So now we have to find our IPv6 address. So to do that, go into Google and type in my IPv6, and then we'll go into what is my IP address. And then go ahead and copy this particular address. Select right-click copy, and then we're going to go into a different website. And this is vulture.com. I'll make sure to leave the link in the description of this post as well. And then we're going to go ahead here, and we're going to paste this, and we're going to select calculate subnet. All right. So below here, you can see that it's provided us with a bunch of data that's not too important. All we need to do is we need to copy this CIDR notation and then copy to clipboard. And we're going to go back to our Cloudflare. We're going to select add items again. And then within our items, we're going to go ahead and paste our new IP address. And then what I'd like to do for the description is to name it something. So for this example, we'll do it my IPv6 and then the date of this particular address. And there we go. So now if you access your site coming from this particular address, then you won't be blocked in any way from accessing your site. But in order to do that, we actually have to set up that rule within our firewall. So let's go ahead and go back to our firewall. And then we're going to go ahead and create a firewall rule. And then we're going to name it allow known traffic. And then we're going to go into fields. We're going to scroll down to known bots, and that's all you need to do for this rule. So what this implies is that if there's any known bots, such as Googlebot or Bingbot or any trustworthy bots that Cloudflare trusts, then they will be able to access your site. So this is very important, especially if you're going to use your domain for Google Ads. All traffic coming from Google Ads, all traffic coming from Bing Ads, all traffic coming from Pinterest, all traffic coming from Twitter, being more specifically all bot traffic, their bots will be able to access your site, but not necessarily people traffic. And then the next part that I like to do is select OR. And then here we're going to make sure that our IP address is allowed. So IP source address, and then is in list, and then allowed IP. So any IP addresses that are in this particular list will be able to access your site as long as you have allow set up. All right. So any known bots will be able to access your site, or any IP addresses that are in this list will be able to access your site. And then all you have to do is select deploy. And the second part of our firewall involves either blocking or challenging the traffic that comes to our site. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a firewall rule, and then we're going to do either block or challenge. And I'll explain why. So in this case, we'll go down to URI query string, and if it does not contain something random, if someone tries to access our site from ppcbasic.com, they will essentially get blocked, right? But if they have a key, such as key equals, and then this string right here, then they will be able to access our site. But if they don't have this in their URL address, then they will essentially be blocked. And you can also do that for challenging. So if the traffic coming to our site does not have any of this string in the URL, then you can actually set it up as a challenge. So you have two options. You either have block or JavaScript challenge, or you can also do a CAPTCHA challenge, but I don't recommend this one because it's a little bit archaic compared to what Google can provide. So the version of CAPTCHA that Cloudflare has is not as good yet, but it might be in the future. But for now, you can either do block all traffic. So if anyone tries to spy on your site and does not have this string in their URL, they will be blocked. But if you do want to allow traffic, but you just want it to be filtered to make sure that it's not just a bunch of robots, then you simply select JavaScript challenge. And I'll go ahead and show you what this means in a second. So we'll go ahead and select deploy. Actually, let's go back to our rule. So if you want to edit them, you'd go here, and then we'll just do block. So let's go back to our IP list, and I'm going to remove myself from the IP list, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when you're blocked from accessing the site completely. So I'm here in the IP list once more, and I'm going to edit. I'm going to remove this. We'll have to wait about 30 seconds to a minute for the list to refresh. So I'm going to pause this video for now, and we're going to go ahead and open up an incognito page. And here we go. So when we try to access our site, then we get this error 102 access denied. And ultimately this means that our URL did not have that particular string. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to our firewall rules, and I'm going to show you what happens when we simply do a challenge. So here's the rules. Once again, we'll edit, and then we'll do a JavaScript challenge. We'll save. I'm going to wait about 10 to 20 seconds once more. So this is what it looks like when the site starts to verify whether you are a bot or not. And then once again, we end up accessing our site. All right, so there we go. So this ends up filtering all bot traffic that we do not allow going on our site. Now within your firewall rules, you can actually end up seeing how much of the traffic that ends up going to your site ends up passing through the JavaScript filter. So you can see here that 2 of them were solved. So those 2 were myself, and then 7 of them were issued. So we were challenged 7 times and only 2 of them passed. And ultimately you can see how much bot traffic is actually hitting your site. Now, a couple other rules you can ultimately implement. You can go into our rules here, and we can also start editing the country. So for example, if the country does not equal the United States, then we can go ahead and do a JavaScript challenge, or we can completely block any traffic that does not come from the United States. As well, we can do other things, such as if the referrer does not contain Google, or if the referrer does not contain Bing, for example, then we can go ahead and block those as well. But for the most part, we'll just select cancel here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a simple challenge here. So JavaScript challenge. So there we go. So if you try to access the site ppcbasicsite.com, then you'll be challenged by the JavaScript challenge to ensure that you're a real person, and then you'll be able to access the site. But of course, any bots that try to hit the site will be blocked. Another thing that I'd like to do is like to show you a plugin that you can also install on your site to block any proxy or VPN traffic hitting your site. So we'll go into our plugins here on our WordPress site, and then we're going to go and type in proxy and VPN blocker. We're going to go ahead and install it. And then on the left side here, we'll go into PVB settings. And this plugin is free up to 1,000 hits on your site. So if you get 1,000 visitors to your site, then it will verify if your site has any proxy or VPN traffic. But otherwise, it only costs about $2.50 per month if you have anything over 1,000 hits entering your site. So anyways, we have enable query here. Does our site use Cloudflare? We'll use yes. Does it use TLS? We'll use yes. Also to detect VPNs. So VPNs are typically virtual private networks that are coming from Amazon, and I'll show you what it looks like in a second. But for the most part, let's select save settings. And then we'll do block actions. So we'll go down, scroll through here. Everything's good to go. Risk scores, I typically leave this off, but what a risk score does is it checks in their system, in the PVB system, whether the particular traffic hitting your site has a particular risk. So we can actually set it to just 10 and 10. So anything above a risk score of 10 will be blocked if it's a proxy or a VPN. And then we'll select save settings. And then we'll scroll down here. So obviously you can permit particular traffic as well from countries, and then advanced. So everything else should be good to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you what the stats actually end up looking like. So we'll go into APIs. And here we can see the data that came in. And the cool thing about this plugin is that you can actually plug it into multiple sites on a single key. So let's say you purchase one key and you start paying $2.50 per month, then you can plug this key onto many different sites, and then it will ultimately end up blocking traffic on multiple sites. But here we have undetected traffic, so traffic that is not sure if it's a bot or not. And then we have VPN detected, so 166 hits on this particular date were VPN traffic. We have 46 hits that were proxies. We'd actually go over here. So we have 401 hits that were proxies, and then VPNs detected, once again, 26, and then refused queries if you've reached your limit, and then the tool stops checking whether you're a proxy or not. But otherwise, we can also scroll down and you can see all the proxy or VPN traffic that ends up hitting our site. And obviously I'm going to block this part right here because it lists all my sites that I run this particular plugin on. But for the most part, you can see that it's being blocked on this site. So two additional plugins that I would recommend installing on your site. The first one would include WordFence Security. So this allows you to block any robot traffic hitting your site. And the second plugin that I recommend is installing All-in-One SEO in One SEO. And I'm going to go ahead and install it here. So we'll go back to one of my main sites in order to show you what the backend looks like when there's actual traffic hitting your site. And within WordFence, you go into Tools or Live Traffic, and then you'll be able to see all the traffic that's coming from various sources that's ending up hitting our site. So we can see that 3 people here were actually human traffic. So green indicates human, gray indicates bot, and this bot traffic is actually being allowed to our site. It's not being blocked. So anything from Apple or MSN, or it looks like even some kind of particular Russian bots that I guess would be flagged as appropriate according to Cloudflare. And this allows you to see any kind of traffic that ends up going through the Cloudflare filter and then hitting your site as well. So this is really important if you want to see what's entering your site, as well as if you ever plan to block any particular traffic. And the other plugin that I'd recommend is All-in-One SEO, and go ahead and activate. In this case, I'm just going to skip this whole step here and we'll go back to the dashboard. So once the All-in-One SEO plugin has been installed, you'll scroll down and you'll go into Tools, and here you'll have an option for Bad Bot Blocker, and then simply scroll down and then you can enable all of the features here, and this will allow you to block any bad bots from entering your site and showing up in your Google Ads analytics. And go ahead and select Save Changes. Now, if you don't see this feature in your All-in-One SEO, This is not a paid feature. It should be a free feature, but if you don't see it, then go ahead and contact their support and they'll guide you on how to enable this feature within your plugin itself. So that concludes this tutorial. Let's go ahead and go back into our final review. In this tutorial, we discussed the purpose and the warnings of setting up this firewall system. So once again, the purpose is that you're ultimately blocking any outside traffic from hitting your site, or you're filtering the outside traffic to meet a certain criteria, such as not being bad bots. And as well, if you install the VPN blocking plugin, then you can actually block anyone that ends up using a proxy to try to access your site as well. So if they're outside the country, then they'll be blocked as well because they're using a proxy in order to access the site within your particular country, and they'll be blocked regardless. And then I showed you, of course, how to set up the Cloudflare system, how to create your IP lists, as well as how to create your IPv6 address that you need to plug into Cloudflare if you decide to access your own website. And then we set up particular firewall rules, and we allowed particular traffic, so known bots, as well as our own IP addresses and our server IP addresses. And then I showed you how to block any traffic coming in from outside of your particular country or that does not match the correct URL address. And then finally, we installed the additional plugins in order to protect ourselves from any particularly malicious traffic or any other bot traffic that gets filtered through WordFence. And then finally, a review. So once again, if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section of this tutorial. I'll make sure to include all the important links as well as any additional information for this video. And keep in mind that the plugins and the tools are always changing, but of course the general idea here is the same. So implement what you can and ask any questions that you may have, and I will see you in the next video. Salut.